his belly tree. Oh, we're on. We're live.
Oh, we're on. We're live. Perfect. So, good evening, everybody. I'm Bhavna, and I'm from Artisanry Co. And we're hosting our Creative Connections once again. We've got Karl and we've got Natalie, and we might lose Natalie at any time because her iPad's not charged. So, if that happens, she'll frantically try and come back on. So, if you're watching us, stay put, and I'm sure it'll be very entertaining. Over to yourself, Karl. I'll go on mute and let you know when it's time.
Thanks, Padma. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Lovely to see you all. Hope you're all doing well tonight in this very cold time. Tonight is our mental well-being and business chat. So just as we usually do, just be aware that there could be things said tonight that could be triggering. So just be really aware because, we're quite honest people. Creatives tend to be really honest. Brutally honest, overly honest. Who cares? We're honest, and I think actually it's a really important thing, and it's part of the creative process. So yeah, so it's great because we have Natalie here, who is a ceramist, and she's come along to chat with me all things well-being. Though she's freezing. Can you hear me, Nat? Can you hear me? Oh, she's looking at me like I've got 3 heads. No.
No, I think she's frozen.
Is that the weather that's doing that? Can you hear
me? No, it's everybody else has as well. Hang on a second. Oh my God. Totally prepared as always. Mind you, the signal's not very good here, to be fair. Right, I've got everybody back again.
Right, can you hear?
Hi.
Hiya. Hi, it's finished. No, I'm kidding. You've missed the whole thing. I talked. No, how are you doing? Did you hear what I said? I was just reminding me.
No.
Oh, good. Great. Well, I'm not even going to say it again. No, just about. It's nice to have here. Just be asking people to be aware that there may be things that we talk about that where there's just an honesty that comes out, and it might be triggering for some people. So they just have to be careful when they're, listening and just being aware of our conversation. So it's really lovely to have you here. From non-snow. There's no snow down with you, is there?
Not at all. It's very disappointing.
London's come to a standstill with the 1 centimetre it's had. Edinburgh's still going 6 inches. Aberdeenshire going, what snow, even though they're under 6 foot of snow up there just now. But, it's all great. So, tonight's theme is mental health or mental well-being and being a creative. So we'll just get straight in and I'll ask you the first question and we'll get discussions going. Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
So question 1 was, our theme is mental health or mental well-being and being a creative. What is your specific journey in relation to mental health?
When you sent me this question, it was like it's one of those really, really difficult questions to answer, I think. But I think for me, probably, I've always kind of been involved in doing something arty and craft-wise because my mum and dad have got their own antique repair business. So it's always been something throughout my life. And all through school, it was something that I always thought I was going to end up in. Every single person in my family did it. And then I did absolutely terrible at school. We're talking ridiculously terrible. Failed my maths 3 times and got a grade lower each time. How'd you do that? Honestly, couldn't believe it. Even my mum was like, how is this humanly possible? And I'm like, yes, I can do this. So I ended up going into becoming a travel agent. Couldn't get settled there. Moved to London. Went into business travel. Never felt as if it was a career. It was just a job, something, to get by on. Then I moved back here and started working for a well-known phone company. And I was one of the managers there, and we managed the bereavement team. So if anybody unfortunately, passed away, they'd ring, somebody would ring up and say, we need to cancel, etc. And while it was a fantastic job and there were some fantastic people there, and the team I worked with, they were all absolutely great, but it started getting really, really on top of us. So the company we worked for never offered us any kind of counselling. So we were getting phone calls every day of people saying, being upset, obviously, but they also felt the need, again, understandable, how that person died. They would have to tell you in great detail. It was never one of the questions we asked. It was just kind of, I don't believe you. But it was, it was one of those. And eventually it starts, getting on top of your mind, and you could never just switch off. You always took it home. There'd always be one story that you had to take home with you. And then it started becoming apparent as the company got bigger that people were actually lying about who had died just to get out of a contract. I know. And that was I think it was like the start of how much I started to think, God, people are just awful. They're just absolutely terrible. And, and then we get the people who weren't dead ringing up and saying, why is my phone being cut off? Why can't I get access to my bank accounts? Because, we'd speak to the banks on their behalf and you'd be cancelling mortgages and everything. It's like people don't realise that, what happens. And we'd have to explain to them that, your child has rung up and said that you're dead.
God.
Yeah. And it was like, oh, okay. And then obviously, they'd end up having a bit of not a row, but they'd be upset. So you'd have to handle that. And it got to the point where it was just, it just became too much. So it was a constant turnaround of staff all the time. And I just thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm not the person that can do this. So there was that. And then I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Luckily, it wasn't in the end, but painkillers mixing with headsets and computer screens, while it was fun at the time, it's not recommended. And it was 8 hours a day, every day. And I was just coming home exhausted and couldn't do it. And then my mum turned around and said, look, this is, you've just got no life. It's not fun. I was rowing all the time with the kids and the husband. And she says, why don't you come work with us? Just do part-time, see how you go, make life a little bit easier. And luckily we were in a position financially that I could do it. So I did. And that's where it started about 5 years ago. And from then, I mean, I'm not going to say I don't ever get stressed, or get, a bit of anxiety and things like that, but nowhere near. It's dropped by like 99%. So it's one of those things that I can't believe I haven't been doing it for years.
Yeah.
I decided to take another path.
Why did I not do this years ago?
Yeah, one of them.
Yeah. And I can hear that, and I have that story, and I remember being told. So my best friend's grandmother, who I called grandma, used to say to me, Carl, you should do more than what you're doing. You shouldn't be doing what you're doing. And that was way back when I first started teaching at the age of 22. You know what I mean? And it took me until I was 37 to finally go, I am no longer staying in school. She was right. Why did I not do this 17 years ago to stop doing this? But I suppose it's about, you have to have that journey. You've got to have that realization. So you had to do the job, and you had to work in that position, and you had to find out how shitty people can be, and you had to find out what your stress level maximum was, and you found it, you broke, and you went, nah, not doing it anymore. And that's exactly the journey that I hear over and over from people, and from all these interviews that we've had. It's the same thing, and it's never wrong. So whatever it is never wrong. What you've just done, that period of your life was never wrong. It was absolutely the right thing for you at the right time, as this is the right thing for you right now as well. It might last the rest of your life. It might not. You might find something else. I've as much as I hated being in education, I think, I can't say I will never step foot back inside of school to do some sort of work again. I can't say that because I don't know that my mindset might not change from the experiences that I'm having doing what I'm doing, and that I could go back into a place with a completely different mindset and not be in that stress position, but be even more creative than I was at the time. And yeah, and I actually also really a big fan of people saying, why shouldn't you have multiple jobs? Why, I have this desire to be a train driver, and it's still there. And I kind of think, if Scott Real decide to do recruitment, and I did this back when I had my first big breakdown, when I had my breakdown about coming out of management roles, and I had kind of started my consultancy work back in 2013, and I applied and I got through the first round, and then discovered I was only going to get paid £22,000 for 2 years, and at that time I couldn't afford to, because I was getting paid the best part of 50 grand a year at that time, and I just couldn't afford that cut. But I could now, and I don't know. I would be tempted to go and do it. You know, my creative stuff will still be there. Can do it in my own time. I may well be, just, and if it's like, do the 2 years training and then do it for 2 years, what have I lost? I've not lost anything, have I?
I think I want to be a train driver now.
You know, they get paid a shitload of money. Oh my God! It's amazing. More than teachers get, and teachers get paid quite well. It's like, wow, but that's not the main reason you'd be doing it. So yeah, so never feel that the journey that you do is ever wrong. I think is the message that we always give to people. Is just, it's right. You've done the right thing, and now you're doing the right thing. And every day you're going to do the right thing, even if it doesn't feel like it. It's the right thing for there and then and now. So good. Through that journey, so through your journey in mental health, it clearly has an impact on you creatively, I would imagine. And how would you say that it has impacted on you in your business, be that both good and bad?
I would probably say the good is that, again, like I'm very lucky with my husband. He kind of lets me get on with things and me crazy ideas, and he doesn't go scared when I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning shouting ideas out anymore. He's kind of learned to live with that, which is always good. But he kind of, he'll sit and listen to me, and I'll say, right, I've had this idea, what do you think? And he'll just say, well, we'll just run with it, see how you feel, see how you can do it. And so in that respect, it's great. Probably the minus side, and this is like my complete own problem that I've got. So working with my dad has got 40 years plus experience in the potteries industry. So I've saved a lot of money by not having to go to university and college, and he's taught me everything, literally everything that he knows. But my dad is a complete control freak. So this is why he can't work with people. He's always said he said, I cannot work with people. And so if he's told me how to do something and I'll do it, and I'll suddenly see his head go like that and go, that's interesting. So I know straight away, I'm like, I failed.
Nothing wrong.
Yeah, I'm like, I failed. And he'll go, do you want me to show you how to do it my way? Like that. And I'll go, yeah, that's good. He goes, I'm not saying your way's wrong. I'm just saying your way's interesting. And as soon as you hear that interesting, it's like a trigger word in my head that just goes, right, this is quite clearly shit. I'm just going to push this aside now, and I'm going to try and do something else. So I've kind of got that little, not like making the daddy proud type scenario, but it's that I'll never be as good enough. I'll never be as good as, as my dad. I know I never will be, because there's no way I'm going to be able to get 40 years experience, from what he's got. And I've also got this big fear that when I first started, that people were buying me stuff because they felt sorry for me. It was like this, oh, look at Natalie with a little hobby. Oh, let's support it.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Honestly.
Actually, the shameless part of me is just like, fucking right, okay, then buy it then.
Yeah, buy it then. Yeah, go on, buy it. Yeah.
Buy it. Why don't you have 4 of them? And actually one person has actually done that. So, I'm no shame.
Bonus. Yeah, but it says but like I say, the plus side is I'm doing something that I adore, and every day, without sounding like a cliche, is a learning day for me. Like simple things like how to pour slip properly. I mean, you never even think that would come into a conversation. Like I didn't even think there was a wrong way to pour it, but I found out there is a really wrong way to pour it. And so every day I'm going into work and I'm happy. I haven't got that, oh God, it's Monday feeling. And I've not had that for 5 years. And because I only work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and then come Friday, I'm itching again. I'm like, right, I need to do something. I need to start thinking about what I can do and work on Monday, and you know, that kind of thing.
So with you're working in your dad's the family business.
Yeah.
Have you got kind of creative freedom with what you're doing within that, or are you doing stuff that he manufactures and then you're doing your own stuff in your own time?
Well, what my dad's main business is, he repairs antique ceramics.
Right.
So I do keep trying to get like creative, because I'm like this. I'm big on the upcycling and, you know, changing things to make them a little bit more modern. My dad calls it vandalism.
Sure he does. Yes. Yeah. My mum would call it vandalism.
Yeah, it's like, how dare you take that figure and do something to it? But so I've learned how to like repair. My dad does like this invisible repairing, which I don't think I could ever achieve what he's done. But again, you know, it's the experience. He's self-taught. Yeah. Both him and my mum are absolutely fantastic at it. But I'll buy broken bits of, you know, ceramics and stuff like that, and I'll kind of try and add things to them sometimes. And again, I'll just get that head. Well, that's interesting. So it's like, so that way he lets me do what I want. He really, really does. And he'll also like have suggestions and say like, oh yeah, have you thought about doing something this way or something that way? Or, you know, he's got like a library that it's got every ceramic book you can imagine in the whole world. It's like crazy. And you'll just like sort of like push the book in front of me going, you know, are you thinking of doing that? And you said it's never been done before. Well, look at this. It's like, oh, okay. But yeah, it is. It does pretty much let me do, yeah, what I want. He's another one that when I get an idea pop in my head, he says like, let's roll with it. And he does like kind of work with me on it as well. So it's good. It's really good.
Good. What advice would you give to someone who is in the same position but hasn't quite released themselves to allow their business to flourish? No matter how small, like no matter how small that kind of seed is, or that growth is, what kind of advice would you give them to get them going?
I would say don't look too much on Instagram at people's videos of doing what you want to do. I think that is a huge hole that people fall down. I've done it myself. You know, I've watched videos on, you know, throwing the mini pots. Don't you ever seen these tiny little machines that have come over, tiny little wheels?
Yeah, I've just heard.
So yeah, so I thought, yeah, I'm a ceramic artist. I can do that. I'll spend 50 quid on that. That's fine. Got it. I've used it about 4 times. The first time I put the clay on, it shot back and hit me in the boob, and I had a bruised boob. Honestly, it was like getting shot. Couldn't breathe. Could not breathe. I thought, oh.
God, there's power in it as well, then.
Yeah, I tell you. And it's like, well, they didn't show you that. So that's been like sort of shoved back in the cupboards there. And I mean, while as well watching makers do videos, it's great and showing you how they do things. That I'm a big believer in that. You should show people how you're making things so it doesn't look manufactured. It also, I think, can give a lot of people starting out a bit of false hope. So they can look at it and go, well, this is quite easy to do. I'm going to do this. I'm going to spend £15,000 on my hobby because I'm going to be fantastic at it. So I would say to people, go really, really, really back to basics. Start small, see what you can do, experiment with it, and just see where it goes from there.
And I think you have to experiment with lots of different things. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's often, you know, I know I want to be creative, but I don't know what I want to be creative with. And I didn't think it was good sewing at all, even though I come from the son of a fisherman. I think I've said this before. I'm the son of a fisherman, not a preacherman.
Wow.
So not that my dad repaired his own nets, but he did repair his own lobster pots and stuff like that. But, you know, his family were all fisher folk, and they would have all been sewing and sorting and fixing, and they'd go off to sea. Some of them would go off to sea, deep sea fishing, and they'd be away for months at a time, some of them. And they would learn to sew clothes and make clothes and knit socks and bring them back home when they weren't, because there'd be big periods of time when they're out at sea, not being able to do anything because it's too rough or it's too this or it's too that. But I didn't for a moment think it was going to be that. And I, you know, obviously being a music teacher and a musician, you know, I always thought that is what my creativity is. And so therefore I always kind of like tried to plug at it, but never quite where I thought never felt it was good enough. And then I turned old vintage books. This is sacrilege, but I turned old vintage books into clocks, and they sold really, really well. So I was able to make mantle clocks by trickery, witchery. I am a wizard. Glasses. I am a wizard. And they sold really, really well, but it just wasn't creative enough. Like I did it and got bored really quickly. I think I did 3 kind of seasons of it, so it didn't even create. It wasn't even a year, and they sold really well, but they didn't. It didn't keep me interested, even though they were selling well. It was like, I don't want to do it anymore, so I'm going to stop doing it. And that's so I did. So this just kind of came from somewhere else, from going to other classes and stuff like that. So I think people need to go off and just experiment, so they can afford to go to a teacher or a tutor, somebody like me or yourself, if you teach your art, and come and have a go, and then see if that piques your interest. And if it does, then can you go and afford to get a few bits and bobs and start trying it. And I hear, so I had a workshop on Saturday, and I heard 2 stories of people saying, I buy all the stuff to do all the things, and then I never do them. And the amount of people that must have an entire house of projects that never get round to doing them because they don't have the confidence, and that's such a shame. So yeah,
it's like you say though as well, you get bored. A lot of people, I mean, I do as well, I get bored on projects, especially if I'm halfway through one and I think, oh no, I just don't like it now, and I kind of like abandon a lot of stuff. And I mean, I've got loads of projects at work that I've started, and there's a shelf of nonsense like the inside of my brain. If you looked at it, if you picked it apart, you'd be thinking, yeah, that's one crazy person.
So I hear you, because again, like with my stuff, so there's stuff that I need to do, and I'm kind of avoiding it a wee bit. But I did give myself permission for January and February to be months that I didn't have to do much in terms of my sewing stuff, that I could give myself permission to say no commissions, nothing, and just doing this. There's a couple of bits that I did have to finish off, and then I'm like, oh, I've got a new idea. So I have 3 new ideas that I'm kind of working or busy thinking I'm going to do the next one. None of them are linked. So I'm doing fruit just now. Why? Why am I doing fruit? What's that all about? But for me, that is, I've escaped for a while. I'm loving it. An idea might come from that I could then put in for selling, but actually that's not why I've done it. I'm going to do the next one, and then I'll probably bring myself back to where I need to be, which is doing the stuff that I know is selling and does, so my birds and my buildings and all of that. But you do, if you have an attention span of a gnat, and that is what I have. It is, not even quite as long as that, to tell you the truth. Then I need to do stuff like this just to release, just to let go of something and then bring myself back in. And I tend to find myself doing that kind of twice a year. I do it now in the winter, which is the worst time of year. So actually probably this is the best time of year to do it, because it gives me something, I feel excited by doing it. So therefore I've got a reason. And then I probably do it kind of in the school kind of summerishy holidays, kind of July time. I will give myself permission for 2 or 3 weeks at that time, even though I probably should be getting ready for other stuff. I do give myself 2 or 3 weeks permission just to go, right, I've got 2 or 3 weeks here, I'm just going to do whatever it is that comes up the hump. And then actually sometimes from that, loads of stuff comes from it that then becomes that's autumn, spring, winter 2024, whatever kind of stuff that you've got. So yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's funny how it's all right to be led away and off to do stuff, but it's about being able to have that ability to bring yourself back into line and go, right, okay, hang on a minute. And I think I kind of link that with not just with kind of being creative, but in a lot of the stuff that I do. So I've given myself permission to sleep for as long as I need to in the morning just now, because guess what, I can do that. But I know I need to bring myself back into line with getting that routine back into place, especially coming into the spring. I maybe do it with food as well. There are sometimes I go, right, okay, I've got a week when I'm just going to say I quite want to enjoy having this, and this, but in a week's time I need to bring myself back in. And that does tend to work for me. It does. If I do and give myself permission, then I don't get anxious or angry about it.
I think you're right. Yeah, I always say that people that are like like to do things like us, like craft and things like that, they always remind me of like, you are a Tasmanian Devil. So you're like sort of sitting there and you can't sort of, your eyes are going round like this. It's like I am the worst person to take to a museum or a like a country home or something like that, because I am that 2-year-old child pointing and going, have you seen that? Have you seen that? Have you seen that? How did they do that? And I'm constantly zooming around and like looking at things, and I do it all the time. It's like almost if I've got to get everything out of my mind quick,
Yeah.
and then I can sit back and go, right, now I've got that crap out of my head, I can like start looking at that crap and see what I can do with it. But you can always always think it whenever I go out, you can always spot somebody who is doing something arty or even like musical. I've seen it in my son now because he's studying music, and he'll be counting. I can see him like sort of counting in his head whenever he hears a record coming on, and he's like constantly, his fingers are going and stuff like that. And you know,
Pipe Major, the 1st Battalion Scots Guards, he just retired this year, and he is constantly playing tunes with his fingers. He's constantly playing the chanter of the bagpipes with his fingers, constantly. Whereas I don't, funnily enough, musically, I'm not. I suppose my leg wiggles quite a bit, but I don't sit and play. I know it's a timing thing. I think it's to do with time. But I have a huge obsession for clocks. So I would sit with, so in this room, I have 7 or 8 clocks in this room alone. That's not the whole flat. And then I will sit in silence and listen to all of them ticking, and none of them at the same time. But I just think it's the most glorious thing in the world. It is the most glorious sound in the world to hear all these. And that's I think where my music ends up being, rather than me doing it's in the stuff that's around me. It's really interesting. Really.
Have you got cuckoo clocks?
No, and I want one. Desperate for one. I have been looking at them, but I'm desperate for a cuckoo clock. I'd love one.
I think they're great.
A grandmother clock. I'd love a grandma clock rather than a grandfather one, because it's just flat's not big enough. You know, these things will come. These things will come. When I just was commissioned to write a composition, which I just finished the other day, and it's interesting because I can be distracted in conversation with people, and it's not because I'm being rude. And some people have said, "Oh, have you got ADHD or are you a bit bipolar?" and all these things. And I've been for assessments, and I've got none of those things at all. It's just like, I'm sorry. It's just I'm a creative. I'm really sorry. My brain is feeling things. You know, I can't. When it comes to songs, I can't hear words of songs. I can only hear the music of the song. The words just don't register. I need to go away and read them. But I was having this conversation with a lady who's bought a piece, commissioned me to write a piece for her sister. And as she's speaking to me and telling me her story, I'm hearing it all. So the key came to me in the conversation. Like I knew what key it was going to be in. Then the rhythm started coming at me, and then the time signature started coming at me. And all of this was happening as she's telling me these things. And I was like, gosh, it's been a long time. I've not sat down and written music for ages. For probably actually 4 or 5 years properly. And in fact, it definitely will be 4 or 5 years since I've written a piece of music. And in that 4 or 5 years journey, I've had such a change in me as a person that the music is coming to me immediately. It never ever used to. It never used to. I used to always struggle to find it. And I think that's a lot to do with just being on this journey of being enough and understanding that my creativity is good enough, and therefore I'm releasing and letting go and not trying to pretend. So yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing what can happen and what can be released if you can just give yourself that space.
No, you're right. Yeah, you're right. It's also, do you find talking to other creative people, especially like music, that the pair of you are having like 5 or 6 different conversations when you start talking about stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can sit and arrange with another creative. Oh, we could do this and we could do this, but actually the chances of anything coming from any of the things that we talk about there and then for us working on it together are probably 1 or 2%. You know what I mean? It's the 90% chance we're not going to do it. But actually that 2% conversation and that enough in there allows you to just go off and just go, all right, okay. It's really interesting. I do find that really, I love creatives, but I also love working on my own. And this lockdown, and not this one, but this last year, I am shocked at how much I'm like, yes, I'm not really having to work with people. Yes.
Yeah.
I loved it. I really loved it. And I've really enjoyed, it's been hard teaching online only, but I've really enjoyed not having people coming into my space. And I didn't realize how solitary I can be and how happy I can be just to be here at this desk, at that piano, in this room, just doing my thing.
Yeah. I get that. I get that. Yeah. It's as soon as I'm in the studio, I'm in my own little room. Yeah, my own little room, away from everything, radio on. It's nice. And it is nice as well when I have to like go downtown, because Tunstall, where I work, it's a very busy little town. And since obviously with the lockdown and everything, the only place that is open is Wright's Pies. Bless, that's the only decent place that's open. And I time it now. So if I get there at 22 minutes past 11, there's no one there. So I can go in, get my sausage rolls, come out, I'm done. Don't have to meet anybody on the street or anything like that. You go 1 minute later and there it's like everybody has woken up and is suddenly coming out the house to do the 30 minutes.
The creatures of habit that we really, really are, and that are. And I used to think that when I used to commute to work at the blind school from Linlithgow, and I would, if I left at 7:09, between 7:09 and 7:11, I'd be at work for 10 to 8. If I left at 7:07 or 7:08 or 7:13, I would be at work at 20 past 8.
Mm.
There just seemed to be this 3-minute window where I could do it in 35, 40 minutes, but any other time it'd be an hour and 20, an hour and a half. Mad. It's mad. Mad.
Mm.
So, do we have any questions on the old Facebook?
I check. I did have a question. When you go on these creative journeys, do you find that it helps you deal with your own space in your own head or in your own life in some way? You know, the fruit that you're doing. What does that feed your soul, your creativity? What is it? Out of my just curiosity.
What was the question? Go and ask the question again.
So my question was, you go on these creative journeys where you sort of give yourself the permission to do these things which are not your normal stuff that brings in the money. But what purpose do they serve for you, really? Is it just to feed your soul?
Yes, I think, and monotony, to get rid of the monotonous kind of, even though, so if I'm, stitching buildings, which I do, obviously I've been doing, did 5 or 6 as commissions for Christmas. Even though they're all different, that process can be quite tiring. If I'm stitching a window, that I've got a way of stitching windows, and it's just like, there's another window. But if I give myself this time, it allows me just to release whatever needs to be released and get away from that, and then be delighted to come back into it. And I think that's what it does for me. But then it also might trigger a new product that people might go mad for that you didn't think that they would go mad for.
All right, that's very interesting. Thank you. That was a very, very entertaining conversation, I have to say. It was absolutely a hoot, most of it in any case. I think the combination of the pair of you was the funniest so far. Natalie, it's really nice to see you come along such a long way in the last year. And I'm trying to remember when I last spoke to you, actually, not even been a year yet. But you've really, sort of blossomed in your work, and you've sort of you've become your own person in it, and a lot more confident and a lot more what you're doing. And
thank you.
I think, from the first conversation you and I had to where you are today, a different person in a way. It's really nice to see that.
That's fabulous. That's really lovely to hear.
Yeah, I know. I mean, our first conversation, I think it was a lot wishy-washy, and you weren't sure what you were doing. You weren't sure where you were heading. And, it's really nice to hear you talk today. And you can see, it's obviously the creativity has helped you release, all that mental stress or whatever you had, but also given you the focus or a professional focus to it. And it's brought you in a really nice balance, I suppose. And while you don't really need the money financially, your husband was supporting, but at the same time, it's nice to have that economic independence. And it sort of shows in your demeanor and it shows in your confidence now. So that's really nice. Good to see that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I know it's like when to say, going back to that first conversation, I was just, again, it's that classic, I'm not good enough. There's no way nobody's going to, people don't want my stuff. And
you are more than good enough. You are more,
oh,
a person. Do you know what I mean? And that's, I think, if we can get on top of that bit first and foremost, you as a person are way more than good enough. Then that can then trigger the everything else is more than good enough. More than
yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really interesting. And Carl, you were a hoot as usual. Good fun. So yeah, we've done about 8 minutes extra, but I'll take another 2 minutes and I'll just sort of, I was going to say, these creative connections from an artisanry point of view has triggered um, for us. The next step turned out that we decided to go down the charity route in addition to what we're doing. And we've registered and we're sort of waiting for the charity commission to confirm, and all of that legal process is still in the way. But as far as we're concerned, we've sort of now started the process to start a charity for young people between 12 and 18, and the impact of art and craft on mental health and stress. And as Artisanry, our aim is to then employ our creative community to provide these
wonderful idea.
workshops in schools, and hope, where I see it going in 10 years time, is to work hand in hand with something like CALMS, which is the Child and the Adolescent Mental Unit, almost as you have Marie Curie and a few other charities who work so closely with cancer patients, and it's that handover is so smooth. um, I would see us going down that route eventually.
I think they're desperate for things like that. So even like things like Teenage Cancer Trust, I've done a bit of work with them with a girl, and I went out and work, and I've actually now got a couple of pupils, music pupils, who I'm teaching because of it. But that just being able to go out and do that kind of work with them,
The
I,
children.
I think that's I think that's a wonderful thing you're doing. Wonderful thing.
So yeah, so we're hoping that as the year goes by and as the platform slowly takes off, which I would hope this year it will, um, the revenue from the platform to some extent would feed that charity, and as it would feed into the sellers development, which we've now taken the next step, and the workshops are that much better organized, and a lot more freer resources available to the sellers community itself for development, but some part of that profit would also go into this charity. So really, really, it's for us, I think these creative connection conversations have really added incredible value. When we started it, I never thought of going down this route, but it's just the personal circumstances with my daughter, which triggered it to some degree.
I think this is the whole point behind this.
The talk, yeah,
The
we
topic.
have to talk
It's that,
about it.
yeah, the whole point behind the talking is about giving space to people to just be who they truly and uniquely are, and then that hopefully allows them to free themselves into being the creative that they deserve to be, and the successful creative that they are inside, and that they've spent far too long telling themselves that they're not. And
Yeah.
it's not about being arrogant, it's about being just really in a space that belongs to you, that is the right space, and where you, even if negativity comes into it, you can have the tools to go, but that's okay, that's not my issue, that might have come here, but that actually probably doesn't belong to me, that probably belongs to you, and you can have an honest conversation with them and go, fine, I believe in what I do, and you need to go and have a look at what you're doing if you don't believe in what I do.
So yes, very, very excited about the next phase of it. Hopefully in quarter 2, we would be able to start it, and Artisanry would be able to employ its own community to give these workshops, and start actually making a genuine difference in or a bigger difference than what we make at the moment.
A wider range.
Much wider range. And
them young, you know what I mean? If I'd known at the age of 12, And I do genuinely, for my own mental health, you know, I held a lot from the age of 10 until I was 18. I had a lot until I was 35, really. But, you know, that age of 10 to 18 and going off to
Very
university,
crucial.
it would have been so different for me, I think, in my 20s. So different.
I would So I would hope that, you know, these conversations that we host every week, we'll continue them, and, you know, slowly look to sort of talk about the rest of the work that we do, and you know, bring this awareness that we constantly do. So thank you very much for your time, both of you. It was really good.
Thank you for
No, thank you.
It was a stressful day, but you made me laugh, so thank you very much for that.
Good. That is going to be a good thing.
I don't think that was the intention, but that was it. It was brilliant, and your iPad stayed, and it didn't run out of battery. So yeah, all in all, good.
And we're back. Is it 2 weeks today at 12 o'clock?
23rd at 12. So we've just narrowed it down to one person every month, because we've got, I think it's too much otherwise, and we've got a lot of workshops on as well. So Natalie, I'll hope to see you on Friday. It'll be useful if you're not on, but try and see if you can. Karl, I don't know if you have time. 10 o'clock on Friday.
No, I do. I'm not working, so the only day I'm working is Thursday. So yay! I will have time. 10 o'clock on Friday.
10 o'clock on Friday. I'll see both of you. Take care. Have a lovely evening. Thank you very much.
And you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.